The Canby Report was produced and recorded on the traditional territories of the Coquitlam, Mississaugas of the Credit, Anishinaabe, Chippewa, Haudenosaunee, and Wendat peoples.
It's April 16th, 2026, and there are 184 days left until the Vancouver municipal elections. This is the Canby Report. I'm Matthew Naylor.
And I'm Ian Bushfield.
Let it not be said that we do not care, listeners, for we are undergoing severe hardship to bring you this episode today. Ian is trapped in his child's room on a tiny little chair, and I am getting married in a week, and so have lost my mind entirely. But politics trudges on, as does the donations at patreon.com/Canby Report, your source for citizen journalism in Vancouver and its environs.
Yes, there's so much going on, so much to keep track of. Weddings, child schedules, contractors in my house. Oh yeah, and municipal politics. So support us at patreon.com/Canby Report. Get access to the Slack where the conversation never stops and fills the void between our chances to sit down and actually record this show.
So, what is happening? It sounds like well, I hesitate to use the term, but it does appear to be what we're getting. An agreement has been reached.
The progressive primary is happening, kind of, but not actually.
Yeah. So basically, the Greens, and I've posted on their website a press release, and CBC has reported that Cope, One City, and the Greens have come up with a agreement to run 150% of council. Basically, they're allowed to run up to 5 candidates per party, which is, I think, just small enough to not really undermine their chances of winning.
Yeah, and the end result is that some of these parties might strategically not run 5, I think, but for fairness, they've all agreed they could run up to 5 council candidates, as well as 13 candidates for 9 spots on school board and 11 for 7 spots on park board. And the who gets what is a little bit different. One city gets 1 more school board and 1 less park board candidate than the other 2 parties. It's interesting, and I think most people who are interested or tempted to vote for these parties are glad to see something agreed. But in Pete Fry's word, the math doesn't add up here, obviously.
Yeah, which is, of course, nothing in comparison to the fact that they're running up to 300% of the needed mayors.
Listen, each party may field their own mayoral candidate, but the parties have agreed to engage in good faith efforts to determine which progressive mayor is best suited to compete. The idea here really mirrors what Cope talked about a couple months ago around a vibes-based progressive primary. Like, we'll know it, who's going to be the most popular and who should run, and we shouldn't do a formal vote of the parties because only nerds join political parties, frankly.
Well, there is something to that, and the fact that Canadian democracy is largely based on these elections for party boss, I don't know that that translates super well to the municipal level because they don't maintain their office as party boss between elections. But I do agree that a strict vote of the membership would have been pretty fraught, given that there was many disputes who could have been eligible to vote, when the membership cutoff deadline would be. All of that is very nitty-gritty, and I think would have just led to a complete breakdown in negotiations.
I think we do see different visions of how it will still play out. Azeroff has a few comments in here saying it is valuable to have more candidates than positions because we don't want to force voters to pick this slate. Like, we should still make sure they have some choice, and that's kind of his argument on the council side. Whereas on the mayoral side, he talked about looking forward to finding some clear metrics for how to do this, versus the energy I've gotten from Cope or the Greens is it's a lot more vibes, and you know it when you see it. You know who's not going to win in a few months, and you know who's got a better shot.
Like, I don't know how you would quantify this, but like I almost feel like, given the nature of municipal elections, there could be a case to be made for just seeing who works the hardest on, like, these things are going to be won and lost based on the strength of a campaign, especially when getting down to that end of the list of 10. The door knocking matters. If you could, like, actually generate enough contacts at the door, that could earn you a nomination. Anyway, that's me musing on a hypothetical that is not the case. Mr. Azarov, they have choice, and that's to vote for you or not. You don't need to provide them with more choice within that if it will be actively detrimental to your prospects. But I understand that this is a sour grape statement to salvage whatever can be claimed to be a victory out of basically the lowest possible standard of agreement for these parties.
Yeah, and there is like one extra element buried in there that I didn't see talked about as much, is that these parties have all agreed that if they can form power in some way, that they are going to support moving Vancouver to a ranked ballot mayoral election system. And I believe that would require a amendment to the Vancouver Charter. If the city is clear that it wants it, I think the province would be more open to moving towards something.
Yeah, like, that's a very different colored horse than Ken Sim being in favor of and then against and then in favor of again, just getting rid of the park board, which is the only other time that I've really thought of the Vancouver Charter being amended of late. I could be wrong there, but yeah.
The other great statement I saw in this press release came from COPE's campaign manager, Sean Vouliez, who said, in 2022, there were too many great council candidates and not enough great mayoral candidates, which is just a perfect dig. I don't know if it was necessary, but it's still very funny.
It is very funny. And given that, ostensibly the progressive mayor was one of those not great candidates, go figure. What do you think? Like, do you think this is going to work for them?
It's definitely better than everyone running 7, right? It's still risky. I think what ends up happening is one party comes out dominant out of this. I don't think it's going to be the Greens, based on some of the stuff we'll talk about in terms of past performance. Mm-hmm. I think one city is hoping this is their shot, but maybe this just results in the Greens evaporating from municipal politics unless something really turns around from them, in which case you have one city in Cope putting up enough to take each of these 3 boards between them.
Yeah, and like I do kind of question what the raison d'etre is for the Municipal Green Party. Like, the Federal Party exists as a vehicle for Elizabeth May to exist in the world, I suppose, or at least did for most of its time. And Adrian Carr was such a huge force within the party. I do think that the allegations against Michael Wiebe during his term as council really were pretty detrimental to an attempt of the party to solidify what was a breakthrough election for them into something more sustainable.
Yeah, and I think also the challenges under Kennedy Stewart broadly left a lot of Vancouverites looking for something completely different, which they came to regret.
Yes. In the meantime, the parties had to submit annual financial reports recently, and so those are available for the year 2025, and there are some interesting numbers in there.
Yes, unsurprisingly, the party bringing in the most money was ABC, raising over $600,000 last year. One city whose financials were not filed on time or yet, but members of one city's team shared the numbers with me. They raised $324,000. This was reported elsewhere as well. Cope raised $169,000. Team raised $166,000. Team actually just nominated, surprise, surprise, Colleen Hardwick for their mayoral nomination again.
Mm-hmm.
The Liberals raised relatively impressive for a new party, $74,000, almost $75,000. The Greens raised $69,000, and Vote Vancouver raised $50,000.
Which also relatively impressive for a party that, because Rebecca Bly.
Yeah.
But
it shows kind of a challenge for them where they need to translate that into, it's unclear what her actual goal, like her official goal is, I guess, mayor and multiple council seats, but I'm struggling to see how she gets from where she is to there, or how she fits in this election.
I can see a situation in which that's possible. I think that it's very possible that Ken Sim steps in it and inserts his foot, knee deep into his own mouth at least one more time, but possibly several more before the October election. And Kareem Alam, is a relatively unknown in terms of his political presence. I know he's been doing a pretty impressive job recruiting candidates, but that doesn't necessarily translate into electoral support. Rebecca Bly has been around for a number of council terms. Things don't have to shake out particularly strangely for the relatively strong center-right bloc in municipal politics, the former NPA thing, which backed Sim in the last election to skip the Liberals and go directly to Vote Vancouver. Like, it's a long shot, but and it relies on a couple of things that aren't in her control, but it's not impossible.
The other thing I find really interesting about annual reports is on the other side of the ledger, on the balance sheet, we actually get to see what war chests these parties have accumulated. And it's one of the things I think is the best predictor of, like, how strong a position are they in to go into the election. That can also be a little bit deceptive, because if a party is spending its money, it'll be a little bit further back, but maybe it's spending it poorly and doesn't have the money to go into the election. So the party with the most money in the bank is One City Vancouver with $131,000, followed by Cope with $92,000. Behind them a little ways is Team with $43,000 and the Greens with $41,000, and ABC has a mere $30,000 in the bank as of December 31st, 2025, I should say. Vote Vancouver is $12,000, and the Liberals are $25,000 in debt at the end of the year.
I don't know exactly why that would be. Sometimes when offices get leased, they assume the debt for office furniture or rentals or whatever, or that's just sort of been deferred. So it's always a little concerning, though, to see that a party that is raising a fair amount of money is nevertheless up $25,000 in the red.
Yeah, and it makes it harder. Like, there's a lot of startup costs, and maybe that's just simply where it landed. It's impressive, though, for where One City and Cope are sitting with pretty sizable chests.
Yeah, that does bode well for them. I'm curious to see if the Greens and their coronation of Pete Fry, nominations generate interest in a party, and both One City and Cope are having these open nomination sessions anyway. I wonder if the Greens have kind of missed an opportunity here to really have a... I mean, Pete was always going to run for mayor, I suppose, but it seems unfortunate that maybe... I don't know if Pete reaching out to What Cities and running for mayor for them as well would have been a possibility, but the camps don't like each other for whatever reason. That much is clear.
A few parties are facing penalties. The Conservatives, One City as mentioned, and Surrey Cares all did not file by the deadline of March 30th, and will have to pay a $500 late fee to get it in by the end of this month. Vote Vancouver got a 1-week extension due to extenuating circumstances and didn't face the fee. But those are some larger parties. The Conservatives are new, but in theory had some talented organizers behind them, although Carrie Lynn Findlay jumped to the provincial Conservatives in her attempted bid for that leadership.
And I'll leave that mess to you.
Yeah.
And Scott.
Across the broader region, there's a few other interesting fundraising numbers. I didn't look fully into all their annual reports this year, but in Burnaby, the BCA remains dominant, having raised $90,000 last year. So they're doing just well. I keep forgetting that Joe Keithley crossed the floor to join BCA at the end of last year. And so they're...
Yeah, it's the one big machine in Burnaby. It's kind of insurmountable. I'm going to be shocked if there's anyone who manages to break through. But, if people are happy, then people are happy, I guess.
Yeah. In New Westminster, Patrick Johnstone officially announced he's running for mayor again. This was kind of one of those worst-kept secrets. His Community First raised $34,000 last year, while his opposition, the Progressives, who are the center-right or right-wing side under Daniel Fontaine, raised $153,000, which is a wild amount of money for New Westminster.
Yeah.
I think the Progressives outraised Community First in the last election as well, so money doesn't always buy success, but they did manage to elect two, and they are hoping to unseat the sort of center-left Community First majority in New West this time.
The big news comes from Surrey, where Doug McCallum is running to be mayor again. Doug McCallum was mayor from 1996 to 2005, and again from 2018 to 2022. He lost last election to Brenda Locke and is gearing up for a return, which, honestly, given how things have gone for Brenda Locke, I don't think this is a fool's errand or anything. This is a serious candidacy, and he might very well win with this.
Don't know how well his party is doing because honestly, I just can't keep track of the Surrey political parties. I do know Surrey Connect raised $208,000 and Surrey First raised $249,000. And as mentioned, Surrey Cares didn't post by the time.
The deadline.
I look forward to the clown show continuing in Surrey, though.
If Doug McCallum wins, he will be 85 by the time he leaves office or dead. But it is a long and storied political career that man has had in Surrey, and, I think it would be foolish to count him out. In West Vancouver, Kirk LaPointe has decided to renew his mayoral ambitions, though not in the same city where he last ran for mayor. This time, West Vancouver is his chosen candidacy. He, of course, ran previously in Vancouver in 2015,
2014.
Whatever.
He lost to Gregor Robertson in one of those vision-dominating eras. LaPointe was the NPA candidate. Post-politics has been writing kind of nonstop about political issues for business in Vancouver and Glacier Media. I think he has some columns in the Hub. Interestingly, I think, Main Street put out a poll last October putting his name as the Conservative candidate for mayor in Vancouver and had him potentially leading as the first choice among Vancouver voters, but sometimes pollsters just make shit up. In terms of who's running, not the numbers. I'm not accusing them of scientific malfeasance.
Yeah. I mean, what's stopping him from running? It seems like everyone's allowed to run for mayor of Vancouver nowadays, so...
West Van needs something. I kind of like Kirk LaPointe. I don't agree with him politically on a lot of things, but he seems like a more sensible, moderate kind of writer and could be good for West Van. You're not going to have some communist winning West Van, so maybe LaPointe is just the guy for it.
Yeah, Mark Sager set a pretty low bar for mayoral candidate and office holder quality, so I am pleased to see, he seems like a decent guy. He has pretty center-right political views. What I would say is he seems very old school Chamber of Commerce type candidate.
Yes.
Which, of course, is the whole raison d'etre of the NPA back in the day.
I thought you were going to say it's the raison d'etre of West Vancouver.
Yeah, fair enough. Yes.
Well, coming back to Vancouver, we have some updates in the ongoing litigation fight between Mayor Ken Sim and Councillor Sean Orr. Council has all agreed to be kinder to one another.
Oh, good. Fantastic. I guess that's better than nothing. I would encourage them to follow through, I suppose.
Councillor Orr a motion to ask everyone on council to endorse a pledge to combat toxic and hostile political environment as we lead up to the election. It didn't mention anyone by name or any specifics, but just said, let's be kind in political legalese. And everyone spoke to it quite positively and said, Yeah, that's a good thing. We all think being good is good.
Well, the political discourse occasionally manages to unite around a topic and take a bold stand, like being good is good. This is, of course, in the shadow of the defamation lawsuit that Sean Orr has filed against Ken Sim in relation to Sean Orr being a drug dealer or handing out drugs on Christmas Day or Eve. Things varied in terms of the reporting. Basically, Ken Sim has filed his statement of defense in this defamation suit, and this statement says that he didn't act deliberately, maliciously, or in bad faith, which...
Or if he was found to, just give me a slap on the wrist, because this was a matter of public debate. Worth considering, I guess. It's a wild defense here. Why does he think he has a defense here?
Well, he's basically trying to use the defenses that are available, the Slander Act, and in common law for people who have been accused of defamation. So he's basically tailoring his statement of defense. This is the correct thing to do, but he's tailoring his statement of defense to the defenses against a statement, if it happened to not be true, being slander. It's kind of weak, but I also have stood up and said that truly believe that inability of my client to attend court previously is not going to impact their ability or likelihood of attending court in the future. Sometimes you've just got to make arguments because they're the only things that are available under the law.
A key part of Ken Sim's defense, or at least part of it, comes down to this idea that, well, you can't harm Sean Orr's reputation because that guy loves drugs. He talks about free drugs all the time and really supports people having drugs. Therefore, to say he's a drug dealer is not really a smear at all.
That is a unique challenge because there is a pretty clear bright line between supporting measures of harm reduction and things that have been recommended by multiple experts and best practices from around the world to actually going out and doing a crime. Like, one of those is a crime and the other is a public policy position. Mm-hmm. So what are we talking about?
We'll keep following the court case as it slowly drags on. I think we've discussed before that very few defamation lawsuits go to trial in Canada, but maybe this one will. We'll have to find out.
Yeah, and lawsuits in particular take forever to schedule, so I think the chance of this thing happening before the municipal election is precisely zero, but it's certainly something that may drag on for a while.
Ken Sim does have ideas for the city that he is pitching both at council and as part of his re-election campaign. Despite wanting to keep the city's tax increases to zero, he wants to spend money.
Yes, amongst the spending money on are a $400 million investment into the Kensington Community Centre in South Vancouver. It's not just the community centre, to be clear, but there are substantial investments into various aging facilities around the city that he is interested in, well, basically deferring the taxes on until the first tax after the election, in which case he might do the same thing that the ABC party did last time and raise the rate by 11%, the highest single property tax increase in Vancouver history.
Like, overall, I think this is a pretty positive move, right?
Yeah, I'm in favor of investing in stuff like in community amenities.
Yeah, the park board had come out and said need $1.7 billion to fund our aging infrastructure, and this covers off the community center part of it. Now, the thing that's kind of raising questions from the opposition is he hadn't released the motion yet as the time of the article that I'm covering, and one of the things that is potentially floating around in here is the idea of delivering projects through partnerships with other bodies. Ken Sim's past discussion of raising corporate funds for things by selling off naming rights, and it's unclear what other kinds of partnerships might be involved. So he's talking about unique revenue streams because he doesn't like property taxes.
I mean, if this was something that you were willing or interested or able to do, you would have followed through with it from the promises to do exactly this in the last election. Like, you've had a number of years to demonstrate that this is possible and can work. Otherwise, it's like literally promising people a fucking pony. I don't get it. This shouldn't anyone.
Better late than never? No. Speaking of ponies, how about baseball?
Sim has expressed support for a plan to bid on a expansion franchise in the Major League Baseball world, I guess. I was going to say league, but there are actually two leagues, I guess. I don't do baseball. It's not my sport. But basically, they're going to be bringing a motion to City Council to look at, so again, the very early stages, to look at bringing an MLB team to Vancouver.
It's such a peak Ken Sim move to have this, like, you know what would be great? Something cool like Major League Baseball. And like, it probably would be good for Vancouver. I don't quite know if we have the interest to sustain it. You know, we couldn't hold on to NBA team, the Grizzlies. But
admittedly, they were the losingest team in professional sports history.
Like the Vancouver Canadians do well at Nat Bailey Stadium, but it seems like
there's no way that they'd be able to play at Nat Bailey.
Well, that's the big thing, right? We don't have a facility for a Major League Baseball stadium. Where were they going to play?
Yeah, I mean, like, there's been a history of those kind of combined football-baseball stadiums, but I understand that both leagues have kind of been trying to move away from that as they develop new stadiums. I kind of suspect that this might require new construction, which I don't know where we'd put it. Maybe the Langara Golf Course.
Well, and so many professional sports things, and especially arena construction, get saddled on the public and then never quite pays back. You'll have some locations where the public either owns it, like the Green Bay Packers is a good example, I believe. But in most cases, it's essentially a public subsidy for a private ownership model. And it becomes this fiasco in every city where the public is asked to build an arena or a venue for millionaires who don't want to. It's come up in Calgary, it's come up in Edmonton. If it becomes a truly public facility and the team is owned by the city of Vancouver, hey, that could be cool. But like, who is the private sponsor that is interested in bringing a team here?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Honestly, this really is the kind of thing where you might want to come out with that corporate sponsor or that, I don't know, does Chip Wilson like baseball? Like, he's a big Ken Sim fan.
Are the Aquilinis tired of the Canucks sucking?
No, which is why
not.
they keep... One of my friends expressed a theory to me that the reason Canadian teams do poorly in the NHL is because we care too much about hockey and the owners care too much about hockey, and so they get their grubby little fingers all over decisions that should be made at the GM level.
So we'll see. I imagine Ken Sim's motion will pass because he has a majority, but I don't know. I don't really see it going anywhere in the long term.
In news coming out of Victoria, there has been the introduction of a bill that would allow for parental leave for local elected officials. This would create minimum parental leave standards that would, at least according to the BC Government News web release, support gender equity and inclusive participation in the world of municipal politics. Of course, it does not involve paying them more, provincial subsidy to municipal office holders, which might be in order, but, you know, as it is, of course, in the province's interest to try and alleviate corruption. But that is, of course, not what this bill is trying to do, and I don't mean to take away from the important work that it is doing.
One of the challenges locally elected politicians, all politicians have really, is they don't get breaks in the same way that almost every other employee can take, right? You don't have guaranteed sick leave. You don't have the ability to go on bereavement leave if a family member dies, and you don't get parental leave. In the legislatures, that can be challenging when federally and provincially we have very narrow majorities now, and so every vote does matter. But in most situations, letting someone take a couple months off or miss a couple meetings is helpful without, like, in municipal councils, that can affect you. If you miss multiple meetings, you
be removed.
Yeah,
like
you can be removed.
it's, and this is important to ensure that we don't limit the candidates to people who are in a position to take time off from other careers, or of course just turn into a gerontocracy because you're done your child rearing, and that's all in the rearview mirror.
You should not have to be running for mayor at 81 years old.
Exactly. And it should be, of course, your choice to run for mayor.
So that's a great bill. I think it should get pretty unanimous support, I hope. The other bill the province introduced around municipal legislation is dealing with this code of conduct issue. Now, Metro Van hasn't been as tumultuous as, say, Kamloops or Harrison Hot Springs or some of the other places that we've checked in on in the past few years. But there is an issue in this province where councillors or the mayor, or sometimes both, come to loggerheads. Things get said. People get called Mr. Hitler, which happened.
Yeah.
And municipalities don't have a lot of strong tools to deal with it. Presently, councils are required to decide whether to adopt a code of conduct at the start of term, but it's optional, and what it says is also optional. And the tools to enforce it are pretty weak. And so UBCM and lots of municipalities have said, help us, give us something more. And the province is doing a little bit of that.
It will be interesting to see what actually ends up shaking out. This is one of those things where I think there is some like strong impetus to give this some real teeth. I mean, Vancouver, even the possibly slanderous comments of the mayor pale in comparison to the nonsense that has been happening out in Harrison Hot Springs or other places around. It's pretty wild and hairy out there sometimes.
Yeah, so the bill will set a province-wide standard code of conduct. It allows independent investigators to be appointed by the city who can recommend penalties for breaches, including up to 90 days no-pay suspensions, but council is in charge of voting for or against those penalties. So if you have a dysfunctional council where it happens to be the mayor and a majority are all bullying like one person on council, they can decide, that's fine, we're going to vote against penalties. Justin McElroy also points out there's no real tools in here to remove people, which is something that's been an issue for a long time. And there's no arm's length process to investigate this.
Finally, in North Vancouver, the District of North Vancouver Council has voted to halt a major industrial business, particularly chemtrade, which is a major chemical producer, which is already extant in Maplewood. They have a large facility there. They make a bunch of liquid chlorine there. That will no longer be the case in future. They have voted against allowing them to continue producing liquid chlorine at that site. And so a history of chlorine production that has stretched back all the way to 1957 will come to an end.
The background on this push to close it comes from a story a couple years ago that we covered on the podcast. It came to us from Investigative Journalism Foundation, which pointed out there's this website, or there was this website running ads called Keep North Vancouver Safe. And it was an quote-unquote environmental conservation organization. But when IJF and CBC looked into it, they found it was connected to the Toronto-based lobbying firm K2 Pure Solutions, which is a company owned by the former co-owner of the Toronto Argonauts and is a top competitor of chemtrade. So a real AstroTurf push to kill this North Vancouver company as a way to really undermine their competition.
Some substantial competition it is. Like, they have made about 70% of the drinking water chlorine for Western Canada. So, like, there is a substantial amount of chlorine that will have to be resourced. But basically, the proposal for safety upgrades on the site and basically the way that they structured it meant that council wouldn't have had the ability to review things in future, which is what Mayor Mike Little and various other councillors have expressed concern over in terms of safety and the possible continued production of chlorine on the site. I guess it would have changed the way that could have been evaluated by future councils. And Mike Little is by no means a tree-hugging environmentalist. He has been very friendly with the business community, and so when he is opposed to allowing a major business in the area to continue operating, perk up and listen.
The company, for its part, is continuing to look at how it can operate the plant. It's going to engage with provincial and federal officials and is considering potential legal action. I get the concern about risk, but there is a need for chlorine to keep our drinking water safe. Right? There's a broad need for this production, and it's a tough one. And the influence of a competitor in astroturfing opposition to this makes me really dislike the whole story, even if I get there are concerns about the potential issues with this one, but an odd one to keep an eye on.
They have demonstrated a ability to operate fairly safely. Like, it's not like there haven't been incidents at the site, but as Councillor Lisa Murray said, perpetuity is a long time, which what the contractor with Chemtrade was asking for.
Hopefully they can come back together with a better contract and continue to make chlorine.
Yes, we do need chlorine. It is important, so hopefully we won't all get poisoned by the water supply.
Speaking of poisoned water supplies, let's talk cocktails.
So, every episode of the Campy Report is ended by a little tidbit from Vancouver's history, and we thought we'd tell you about some of the drinks of Vancouver. Not a cocktail, but the most notable of these drinks is, of course, the London Fog, a disgusting concoction of Earl Grey. I don't like bergamot, but people tell me it's great who like Earl Grey tea, but it's basically a latte with Earl Grey tea.
And a little bit of vanilla.
And
Okay. Gotta have that flavor in there.
Yeah. That was invented in Vancouver.
I have it here from Vancouver is Awesome as being invented at Vancouver's Buckwheat Cafe in 1997 by a Mary Loria, who was working at a paint-your-own ceramics place and living nearby. She would go to Buckwheat Cafe, and I think she wanted something to cure her morning sickness.
Well, I'm glad that worked for her, but that's not all Vancouver has produced in the realm of drinks. There's, of course, the Vancouver, which is a cocktail that is basically just a gin martini, a little bit of Ballantines added, and so that's unfortunately a little disappointing, but it does look delicious. I won't say that it doesn't look good. Certainly better than a London Fog, but it's not that unique for a city that has so many interesting ingredients available in it.
Yeah, there's surprisingly few cocktails invented in Vancouver, but the Vancouver was widely accredited to the Sylvia Hotel, although I think the Hotel Vancouver has also tried to claim it, as these things do, going back to the 1950s. But Scout Magazine has an article saying the Vancouver was actually just kind of floating around in the Prohibition era. They were the first ones to really sell it effectively. So
I did say the wrong liquor earlier. It is gin, sweet vermouth, and Benedictine, and some orange bitters. Which, I mean, you make a gin martini, you add a liqueur to it. It's like not all that groundbreaking. I have no doubt that this combination has arisen at some point previously.
Like, we're both from Calgary. Calgary can claim the Caesar. Whether you like it or not, it is unique.
Canada's favorite bivalve-based cocktail. There's an actual thing called the clam barrier that Mott's talks about when trying to market its products overseas. They truly cannot get the rest of the world to buy into the Caesar, even though it is fantastic. Vancouver has had a number of interesting cocktails produced just off its shores, however, on Eric Hamber's ship. Eric Hamber, of course, being the former lieutenant governor of the province, the Vencedor. He entertained everyone from friends at the yacht club to sea cadets and British royalty. I'm, of course, getting this from a Vancouver Archives article. In addition to being lieutenant governor, he was also a commodore of the Royal Vancouver Yacht Club, where he held the trophy for being the most hospitable ship, which I am 100% certain is best party location / drunkest. They have a variety of things from the 30s, including the Vencedor, unless this is Vancouver. But it says the writing is terrible, but it's gin vermouth, dash of orange bitters, and Benedictine. Oh, we've cracked this wide open, Ian. It didn't come from the Sylvia, or it came from Eric Hamber and the boat, the Vencedor, and it's literally called Vencedor Gin here on this period cocktail recipes thing from the ship.
Well, with that flavor exploration of the Lower Mainland, raise a drink. I know Vancouver's non-alcoholic drink scene is also growing rapidly too, so there'll be something available for you regardless of your alcoholic preferences.
Yes, enjoy yourself a libation, relax, kick back. For Leg and Boot Media, I am Matthew Naylor.
And I'm Ian Bushfield.
Good